Hey, this is Bond Diesel, and today I bring you a The Division 2 video giving a relatively quick summary of what I did and what I saw at the hands-on The Division 2 event in San Francisco. The event was based on PvE and Endgame for The Division 2, and we learned a lot about the game and what to expect. So basically what I saw was open world gameplay, story missions, endgame missions, and lots of new gear and guns. We got 2 sessions of hands-on gameplay, and here are just my general thoughts. The White House base of operations is really neat, and the way that they've laid things out is interesting to explore and just look around. It seems like it'll be upgraded through the story, kind of like Division 1, but it appears to have more features, especially from the start. There's also settlements in the game that kind of act as mini base of operations around the map, and you can upgrade those as well. But they have vendors, it seems like you can get new missions there, and even things that seem like they might be kind of randomly generated missions. Now the story missions, or the main missions, seem to be much longer and deeper than the Division 1, and I'm wondering if there will really be any that you can speedrun, kind of like Lexington in Division 1. The side missions are nearly, if not more, in depth than the main missions from Division 1, and I was really impressed with how fun they were and how unique the ones I got to experience were in a relatively small part of the map. The checkpoints are open world locations that can be occupied by enemy factions or civilian settlement factions. When taken from an enemy faction, they reveal a loot room that provides a lot of gear that I suspect will mostly be helpful in the 1 to 30 story grind. The open world in general had a lot of different enemies seemingly randomly placed around the world, and even some set pieces like civilian executions that you need to stop. It seems like rather than Division 1, where all of the enemy spawns in the LZ and the DZ were pretty much set and they were on patrol routes, in Division 2 it seems like they've heavily modified the West Side Pier system that would randomly generate enemies, and this one seems a lot more refined and not quite as chaotic as the West Side Piers in Division 1. The endgame missions, known as invaded missions, seem to replace the Division 1 legendary missions, but instead of a boosted regular faction, you fight a highly advanced new faction, and the missions appear to have a new story and narrative specifically for the faction you're fighting. While these definitely seemed a little more bullet spongy than the regular game I played, I also didn't have very optimized gear. I will say that they weren't entirely that way, and enemies that were bullet spongy, it made sense. That's kind of a theme in this whole game, is that if an enemy has armor bars, they probably actually have armor on, where if they don't, they're probably lightly geared. It's a lot easier on the brain to shoot someone in the head a few more times when they have a big giant helmet on, but you know, there is still some of that RPG involved here. The gear brands seem really significant, and since I didn't have much time to play, I wasn't able to play with the builds as much as I would have liked, but from the ones I've spotted in footage ever since the event, I've really found that kind of the way that you could put together ninja builds in Division 1, I feel like you'll be able to do something similar with just the gear brands in Division 2. The gunplay, in my opinion, is much improved, and the weapons feel very different from each other, with really significant impacts by the gun mods that you choose to put on them. Having the new system of having positive and negatives to each mod really does impact your choice, and it's going to make a big difference too on whether you're playing on consoles or on PC. I got to do both, and I found the gunplay to be satisfying on both, but the way I modded my guns on both were very, very different. The new rifle faction, the new rifle class, is also interesting as well, because there's a bunch of favorites from the first game and some new ones in that class that play very, very differently. For instance, the UMP variant, the USC, is actually a single shot SMG in the rifle category. There is a M16A2 that most people will remember from Call of Duty 4, that is a 3-round burst, and it's the only one I found so far that is that way. They are very powerful. I really like the single shot. I love the MDR in Division 1, and I really can't wait to mess around with that. The movement in the game, which has been a much talked about thing in lots of comparisons to games like Wildlands and stuff like that, I still stick to my guns that it definitely still feels like the Division. The biggest difference is that there's definitely a weight to the characters that is different, but the whole talk I've seen of the floaty controls and that things don't feel as good as the first game, I just still dismiss. I'm not seeing it. I've played a whole lot of the first game and I still think the movement is great. The vaulting over cover and onto objects and stuff is way faster, and I would make the argument that the movement feels a lot better in Division 2, on top of the idea that they've gotten rid of things like the chicken dance and so on. Last, the new talents and the new way of unlocking them. No more firearms, stamina, electronic system. Feels like they can pretty well control metas if they crop up, and I feel like there's going to be an ability to make it more challenging this time, and not just allow one giant meta to pop up. Maybe I'm wrong. I hope I'm not. So my overall feeling is that the game truly does appear to be a real sequel, and something along the lines of maybe what they even really wanted Division 1 to be. I don't have any real concerns about like a Division 1.5 situation, and I really feel that people will find the Division 2 to be very familiar, but feel like a fresh take in a new game. It really does feel like a nod to the community, and definitely an expression of a lot more of the vision of what I think the developers have intended for this franchise ever since the first game. When it comes to concerns, my main concerns lie with things that are basically just in my own head and not really with things I actually touched. More than anything, I just hope for a smooth release and that it grabs people early and we don't have the mass exodus of people the way we did in the first game, that while the game bounced back in a way, it never lost that reputation, and I really hope we can reset that. Obviously, we have things like wanting to make sure that like Cronus Max on consoles is figured out, that the new anti-cheat system on PC makes things, you know, a little more fair. We have to hope that microtransactions won't be anything silly, and that the way they handle this season pass and all this other stuff will be fair. And more than anything, all of these issues can really be handled well by being, one, transparent, and two, you know, taking care of issues as quickly as possible and maybe taking us along that journey when those things happen. Over the next few days, I will release around 7 more videos. It's mostly going to be with lots of gameplay, but I do also plan to have a bunch of Twitter and Instagram posts with new guns, talents I found, gear brands, and so on. Also, be sure to check out my podcast, The EchoCast, which is on Anchor, iTunes, Spotify, and YouTube, for kind of more of a long form thought on the entire event and what I got to put my hands on in a more relaxed situation than one of these videos. And finally, I want to throw out a thank you to Ubisoft, the Ubi PR team, and everyone involved in the Division 2 who has tolerated me over the last couple years. With special thanks to Stone, Yannick, and Keith for chatting me up during some downtime. And last, a huge thank you to anyone who watches the streams, checks out the videos, listens to the podcast, and in general puts up with me. I wouldn't be in this situation, I wouldn't have this information if it wasn't for you. So, if you like this video and you want to see more Division 2 videos coming up, make sure to subscribe to the channel, like this video, and leave me a comment with what you're thinking. You can find me on Twitch, where I do stream multiple times a week, and on Twitter as BondDiesel. You can find me on Instagram as BondDiesel_Twitch. You can find links to all of these pages and even more in the description below. And that's all I have. So until next time.